Hey guys, so I've just played a game against a player rated 532, and it was a 20-minute game, so I didn't record it live, but I thought we'd run through it as a good exercise in how to beat players rated under 600 on your route to 1000 and beyond. So the way that I approach this game is, as always, doesn't matter who you're playing, you should play principled chess. Don't go crazy. Allow your opponent to make mistakes. You want to line up future possibilities for yourself by dominating the board, making sensible moves, controlling the center, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go straight in, see if you can spot the kind of moves that a beginner would make versus a better player, an improving player. Okay, so white starts with playing e3, which is a very unusual beginning, and I decided to do what I normally do when I'm given the opportunity, playing black, which is that I'll play the reverse London, because that gives me a secure and pretty solid start to the game. Move 2, they play knight to a3, which is very unusual. Now there's a temptation here somehow to think maybe moving the king's pawn and then capturing on there, forcing isolated double pawns on the a file, but is that principled? I'm not sure. So I decided just to proceed with the normal London approach to bring my queen's bishop out and preparing for this nice pyramid structure on the light squares. White now plays g3, which I'm guessing is preparing for the fianchetto on bishop on g2. So I carry on with my plan, because a bishop here, fianchettoed, is going to be looking at a row. So we look into a wall of pawns, and that's not going to be great. What they actually do is play bishop to h3. There's very little point in me exchanging off a piece that I've already invested one move to develop. So I decide to move forward. I could have moved back to g6. I decide to move forward to e4, attacking the rook. And there's only a couple of moves here. He's got f3 or knight to f3, plays pawn to f3. So I now notice that we've got 3 pawns that have nudged forward one square, which I think is weakening white's kingside. So I'm now thinking, okay, white's most likely to be wanting to castle queenside, and if the king's on that side of the board, I want my bishops on the opposite corner, where they're looking towards the king. So I retreat my bishop back to g6, where it's on this nice diagonal, looking down at where I think white's king is going to go. So now c4 is played, attacking my pawn on d5. I could take the pawn, but the knight would just recapture. That would bring the knight back into the middle of the board. So in the end, I just think, let's play c6. Then if c captures, I've got c captures, and it hasn't damaged my pawn structure too much. Then I just need to finish developing my pieces and castle kingside. b3 is now played. And this removes the idea of capturing that knight with my bishop and forcing b takes a3 and those double pawns, because that's now moved out of the way. Okay, so I decide to develop my bishop. I'm preparing to castle, and this also of course pins the pawn, the white's d pawn, so it can't move right now. And white's bishop now moves out to b2. Now I'm keeping, because this bishop is still on this diagonal, the bishop is looking at that knight, so this bishop has to stay in the defense of that knight. Alright, so next move, I'm just going to finish development and get my king castled safely. It's always a good idea. And now the bishop comes out to c3, attacking my bishop. He thinks, well, I can't be taken there because I'm defended by a pawn. But yes, remember, this bishop was defending the knight on a3, so I grab that knight and I'm up a minor piece. Right, this is the kind of move when you need to grab the piece, put it there, and before you let go, think, is there anything stupid about this move? Am I leaving anything undefended? Oh yes, my knight, right? And do something about it. But he didn't do that. He's still got 16.5 minutes out of 20 minutes on the clock, and he's blundered a piece already. Okay, we have knight to e2, possibly preparing to castle kingside. I don't think this... I mean, this knight could come here, could come here, we'll see. So I bring my other knight out to here. So now I'm thinking this could be a plan. If my knight can come up to d3 with check, force the king to move, prevent the king from castling, that might be a plan. It also means that my knights are now protecting each other, which is... it's okay, it's solid, and that's my direction here. I want to play solid chess, protect my king, avoid mistakes. It's also nice to have my bishop on here, where it's both protecting these two pawns and is defended by both of those pawns in return. So the knight does come out to d4, where it doesn't have many options. I mean, it can't go to any of these squares without being captured, so I'm not entirely convinced of that move. So I carry on with my plan. Bring my knight out to c5, again still heading for the d3 square, if white doesn't castle. Pawn is pushed forward. Now, this would have been an opportunity to go in and force the king to move. However, king to e2 would have forced my knight back. So in the end, I decide to exchange on e4. So I capture, white doesn't recapture, but instead goes for the instant immediate castle. So then I bring my knight in here to d3. Maybe one move earlier would have been good, but it's defended there by the pawn. I've also got options of maybe putting my bishop here with a fork on the rook and the bishop, which would pretty much force the bishop to capture. Then my knight can recapture, and then my knight can dive back to its space. I'm up a piece, so exchanges are going to be generally, all other things being equal, are going to be in my favour. Now, white decides to push b4, thinking, aha, I have the bishop trapped now. It's trapped in my web. This bishop can't get away. It can't capture that pawn. Well, actually it can, because white has miscounted his attackers and defenders. I have two pieces attacking that pawn against only one defender here. So I can now go ahead and capture with either one. I decide to capture with the bishop. I think both of these pieces are actually pretty strong, but this works out quite well. I'm thinking my knight can come back here to d3 and keep causing trouble and problems for white. Rook comes across. So I've got three options here really. I can defend with the c-pawn, which also attacks this knight. I could play a5 to defend the knight, or I could bring my queen to a5, which defends the knight and also slightly hits this pawn. It's a second attacker against that pawn. This is like an X-ray, a bit of a skewer. If I simply move my knight out of the way now, the rook can come and capture the pawn behind. Okay, so skewer is where you've got a higher value piece in front of a lower value piece. So the opposite way round to a pin. In the end, I decide that because of this, because the bishop has captured my bishop, and then my knight recaptures, one thing that I noticed is it leaves this knight hanging. So I decide not to move my queen up to a5 and move my pawn to a5 instead to protect the knight. White again fails to scan the board, fails to say, okay, what is now undefended on either side. Doesn't notice that his knight is undefended, so I go in and grab that, and that's the point at which my opponent resigns and thinks there's no more real play in this game. Fair enough. So the point is that to beat players rated 500 to 600 and beyond, you don't have to do anything spectacular. I did nothing spectacular in this game. There were no very deep and complex plans. There were some general ideas, but my main focus was on principles. Control the center, don't leave pieces undefended, You know, just play a solid game. So that is my advice to you. Focus first on all of those basics. Developing your pieces, getting your king castle, which I didn't even manage to do in this game, but then my king was never really threatened either at the same time. So that's it really. That's how you beat a 500 rated player, and hope you've got some ideas out of this. The main one being play solid. Okay, give yourself the time to play solid moves, and you'll be on your way. Okay, hope you've enjoyed it. See you next time.